First thing you want to do is blow out this whole area with a blowgun because you don't want any sediment to fall down into that fill hole when you're filling it. For this video, I'm not going to use my transmission flush machine because at $20 to $30 a quart, I have to clean this whole thing out and prime it with 2 quarts so I'll never get back. Plus this torque converter is really small, so it doesn't really hold that much fluid, so drain and fill will work great. But I'm going to post a link in the description that'll tell you more about transmission service and also using these machines. This is the general procedure that you can find on PDFs pretty easy on the internet from Honda. Fundamentally, what you need to do is you need to exercise each one of your clutches to get as much oil up in them, because most of it flows out fast, but the residual will hang out there. And then it slowly gets back to the trans, but it will drop your trans level just a little bit as it all drains back slowly. So let me show you the clutch pack. So when they say go up to 4th gear, you can see as they're trying to exercise all the clutches and the brakes, in order to get all of them, you got this one guy right here, which is at 4th gear. So this is why they want you to go up to at least exercise them. So I'm going to deviate from these instructions because quite frankly I don't feel like busting out my lift. So what's going to happen is I'm going to drive the vehicle to the end of the road and back, making sure I can get to at least 4th gear. Then I'm going to come back, do a short brake torque in my garage, load up the converter so it gets full pressure, make sure the converter is full. I will hit it to 2,000 RPM for a couple seconds too for the heck of it, and then leave it running in park. When I check my temperature to make sure I'm roughly 99 to 104, you can feel it with your hand, or you can use a infrared gun on the trans. I'm going to have a computer, but pretty much I want to be slightly below 99 because you can already see they want you to try to get as much in as possible. Everybody knows these transmissions are also used in things like Jeeps. Now the thing about a Jeep is it goes at a much steeper grade, or is expected to perform at a much steeper grade. So typically transmission fluid level is set by specification of what grade. Obviously you can't drive your vehicle upside down because the oil won't be at the correct level in the trans while the vehicle's running. So at steep grades all the oil might go to one side. That's why you typically would increase your oil level to protect against that. So they have this dipstick here so they don't use the plug on the side of the transmission for your level. So what I did was I got the overall dimensions of this stick from here to here where it's referenced off the trans, and then I'm going to work it backwards, and then I'm going to mark the side of my trans. So here are the fluid levels. What I'm going to do is I'm taking the nominal level, the minimum, and the maximum distance on the stick. I'm going to measure it backwards from a reference point, and then I'm going to just put a little chalk mark on the side of my trans to understand where they chose to put their fluid level over at Chrysler. My expectation or prediction is it's going to be slightly higher than the level plug that's on the side of the trans, because they're trying to protect for additional grade or angles, such as driving super steep parking garages in Chicago or up sides of hills and valleys or whatever, like a Jeep thing, you know. So before I raise the vehicle up, I'm going to take the factory ride height so that I make sure I'm level. On my rockers, I'm sitting about 11 1/4, but I got the running boards. So that's my reference point when I go to set my jack after the wheel's off. So after my short drive, I'm at 98.6 degrees, which is darn near the temp range they want. Now I'm going to check the fluid level to see where the factory set it. So as you can see, if you use an infrared gun, you want to try to hit something that might be dark black paint because of emissivity issues with infrared, but I'm about the same temperature either. But you can see if I go into something a little bit more shiny, temperature is going to drop a little bit. So that's why it's nice that I have that black paint that's there from the road. As you can see, that's an 8mm on a swivel. It doesn't really get any easier than that. Engine off, but anyways, I shouldn't have done that for the video because I forgot to record it. But the fill level was about midway up that fill plug there. So that's typically where the factory level is. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to also measure out to make sure the amount of oil that I get out is exactly the amount of oil that I put back in. Just as another double check. But this should be done with the engine running. Here's the drain plug. As you can see, this fluid is probably going to be pretty black. Now, the thing about it, it's kind of a clean black. And a lot of times when they manufacture these transmissions, they put corrosion inhibitors on the parts. And a lot of times those corrosion inhibitors will actually cause the fluid to blacken. Doesn't necessarily mean your transmission clutches are wearing out too fast or anything. There were no crush washers because there's a green gasket there. So now I'm just going to undo the fill. So here's the expensive fluid. As you can see, it was roughly 4 quarts for $123 at the dealer. Some people can find it cheaper on the internet, as low as 20 bucks. So what I'm going to do then, to verify filling by replacing what came out, I'm going to mark the fluid level on one jug. And when I put the caps back on, or the plugs back on, I'm going to pour 1 quart in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the old fluid in the pan and I'm going to fill this jug back up to the exact same mark on the line. Then I'm going to dump it into another bucket. And then I'm going to do the same thing again with everything that's in the pan that it just drained into. So this way I will know how much came out and making sure that what I put back in is pretty much the same amount. So now I'm going to fill the trans with the first quart since I put the drain plug back in. Here's a very exciting oil pouring video for you, that nice green fluid. Okay, this is the final one. I already got 3 quarts out of it. So now we're going to see 3 and how many quarts. So let me fill this guy up. So as you can see, we're right there is the line for 500 milliliters, so we're almost 3.5 quarts on the dot. It's still draining, so we're getting that little bit, and I also spilled a very tiny bit on the ground, so I'd be right there just above 500 milliliters. Pretty much I might just throw the 3.5 quarts back in and call it done and not even drive it. So nothing in my life ever goes this perfect, because there you have it, 1, 2, 3, and then here's the 4th quart, which I use an old oil jug for because the good oil is still in here. So what I did was I put an extra 100 milliliters of oil in for good luck. And then I'm debating on even checking the fluid, because nothing in my life ever works out so perfect according to what the drain and fill capacities are. I drove it around the block. Trans temp's now 116. Basically shifts like it shifted before, so nothing spectacular there. Maybe for YouTube fun, I'm gonna go check the fluid level, and basically I already know I got it slightly overfilled, but not by much. I'm going to pull the plug. If anything comes out, I'm gonna call it done and good. So the oil level's about halfway up the plug, which is lower than the Chrysler spec and basically right where it was when I initially pulled it and checked it the first time. So we are perfectly good here. So let's take a look at the Chrysler Jeep method for checking the oil level on this with our custom dipstick that you got to stick in. So what I did was I have my trusty ruler here, and I can slide this guy up and down. So I did about 110, which is what I calculated for my maximum oil height for the nominal level at the coldest temperature. And then I also did another one for 124. And then the way I did it was, I noticed in here that the mechanical engineer, this is the plug back here. It's hard to see, but there is a fill plug right there that I'm pointing to, way back there. So what it looks like the mechanical engineer did in his CAD program, this plastic bottom here looks like it lines right up with the flat surface right here. So that's how he snapped his alignment across the transmission to make this guy line up with the brackets he wants on the trans, with the center axis being perpendicular, or parallel actually, my bad, this is front wheel drive. So then I took my trusty tool and I referenced off of that alignment down to where the drain plug is. So what I came up with, I put a piece of masking tape and then used a Sharpie. You can see with the Chrysler Jeep, their minimum fill range is actually at the very top of this plug. And then their maximum is just slightly above it. So don't be afraid when you go to top this thing off that, oh my gosh, let it drip out. Nah, man. Jeep, they have a specification for the same trans where they're slightly higher so that they can probably take steeper grades when going around hills. So it's minimum transmission fill that you really need to be worried about. Being a little bit too high is not a big deal. I'm actually going to go throw another 100 milliliters in now that I see how high it is for the Jeeps. Kudos to the ZF sales guys. They pulled in their strut side and they packaged deal the transmission and the struts to a Japanese car company. That's pretty impressive.